Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. I'm your host Monica. We're back again. New week, new topic, new guest like we do every single week. And this week we have a returning guest with us. This guest is someone you've probably seen on TikTok. You're gonna see her on YouTube very soon. She is a returning guest and I absolutely adore having her on. So I'm so happy to have her back on the pod with us. Guys, everyone give a warm welcome to Alexa Recommends. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on, Alexa.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me, Monica. It's like, honestly, anytime you ask me to come on, I'm here.
Yes, I love it. And guys, we are going to be talking about the best movies of 2024 because 2024 was actually a very impressive year in terms of films. So we're going to be diving into some of our favorites, some of our top picks. But before we get into that, we're going to go to Media Mania where we talk about new releases and entertainment news. And one piece of entertainment news that I wanted to discuss, because we haven't talked about it yet in the podcast, is Ryan Coogler's newest film, Sinners, starring Michael B. Jordan. And I am very, very excited to see this movie because Michael B. Jordan will be doing, two parts for one actor. He will be playing twin brothers Elijah and Elias Smoke, along with Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, and it is a vampire film. But it turns out that the premiere for this movie is supposed to come out earlier this year is actually being pushed back to April. So I was a little... Actually, Alexa, you're the person who told me this, so just find this out. But I'm still excited for the film. I'm disappointed that it's going to be pushed back, but that's okay. We're still going to watch it. We're still going to go see it.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, it's possible that it being pushed back to April is honestly like a good sign because it does kind of show that they're like expecting good box office and maybe want this movie to like, kind of be one of those movies that helps jump off the summer season. I think similarly with Mickey 17 being pushed back more towards the spring, I'm really excited for both movies. I'm really interested to see how Sinners plays out. I think it's really difficult for an actor to play two roles.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see how that comes together. And the trailers, I think, have been like cut really well. They get you excited for the movie and you can kind of like sense the tension and the horror elements of it without knowing too much. Like, because I still really don't know what it's about outside the fact that like Michael B. Jordan is playing twins and there's vampires.
Yes. And I love that because a lot of times with movie trailers, they do tend to leave very little to the imagination, which can be very disappointing. And I feel like that's difficult. You're trying to get people to come see your movie, but if they already know what's going to happen, then like, why would they even bother buying a ticket? So I feel like Ryan and Michael have done a really great job of marketing the movie. I'm very excited to see the film come out in April. And I feel like Ryan and Michael, they are two collaborators that really do stand out when it comes to like movie, like director and actor collaborators. And I feel like the vampire film is going to be very interesting to see because we've been waiting for Blade for like years and it has not come out and it is apparently shelved indefinitely. So Ryan Coogler was just like, you know what? We're going to make our own Blade. We don't have to wait on them.
Exactly. And I also wonder how much of the original like OG storyline for Blade just became this movie. Like, you know what I mean? I really wonder if like this was like the rough draft that Coogler kind of had for Blade and was like, actually, I mean, if you're not going to make it, I will.
Listen, if they're not going to do it, you may as well do it yourself. And it's probably going to be better in his hands anyways, because Ryan Coogler does have a great creative vision and without any kind of like studio interference or any kind of like, a lot of times people like to come on set and they don't have the creative vision that you do, but they seem to want to, whisper in your ear. So the fact that Ryan Coogler will be at the helm of this film makes me very excited. And also, I love Black fantasy. I like Black mythical films. And, like, Black vampires are just, like, fun and sexy and scary. And the fact that Michael B. Jordan may be on our screen in the Dolby Cinema in a wife beater, possibly shirtless... I will purchase my ticket for that. I will be seated. I will be ready to see it.
No, I feel that too. Like I will be seated, and honestly, I really support them in general because I think that it's important for like a black actor, especially of Michael B. Jordan's caliber,
Mm-hmm.
to continuously work with a fellow black filmmaker in the way that
Yeah.
he has. And I like in general, I'm gonna encourage that.
Yeah, because I feel like for a long time, a lot of, black actors, they have such great talent and great poise, but there aren't a lot of directors that are looking for black talent, because
Hmm.
like there are always a few that stand out, like Viola Davis and Denzel Washington, but a lot of times with directors, they just seem like hesitant to take on, black talent and to have like black directors that want to have talent that reflect like who they are, their community, and tell their stories and be mindful of how the stories are told. I think that is so much better. And I'm glad that we're seeing that a lot more in this space. Like Ryan and Michael, to see Jordan and Daniel, like these, pairs, these creative pairs in the Hollywood space, making the stories they want to make, making the stories that they want to see, not waiting for someone to say yes, not waiting for someone to give them the go ahead, but doing it like of their own volition. That's something that I'm glad that we're seeing a lot more in like the film space and also like the television space as well. And it sucks that it took so long to get here, but I'm glad we're here. I'm glad that we're seeing it. Yeah. And one other piece of news that I did want to dive into because I found this was kind of blowing up on TikTok a little bit. But for those who don't know, there is a very popular black fantasy film called Children of Blood and Bone. And the book was written by Tomi Adeyemi. It's a best-selling novel. And I believe it was like a couple years ago, the rights for the book to be made into a film was sold off.
Hmm.
And just recently, there was an open casting call for the film, and the film has been casted. And the author of the book, she announced it on TikTok, showing off the star-studded cast, people including, Damson Idris, Viola Davis, Cynthia Erivo, and one casting decision that people were surprised to see was Amanda Stenberg, because the character that she was cast as, Amari, she is dark skinned. And to be honest, for the book Children of Blood and Bone, it is inspired by Nigerian mythology. So it was believed that most of the cast would be dark skinned. And when the open casting call was first announced, there was a huge emphasis on Nigerian actors to be considered for the roles in the film. So a lot of people had a lot of thoughts about like well-established talent being cast into the film adaptation, but namely the fact that Amanda Stenberg is being cast in this role of Amari when it feels like this is not the right casting decision. And for me personally, I feel like it was very strange to see it happening because for a long time in Hollywood, they have these roles that are meant for like people of the black diaspora, but you do not cast people who are in the black diaspora. You're casting black British people and black American people. And like actors are actors and that's fine. But if someone's ethnicity is part of their role, I feel like it would be best to cast someone that fits that. Not to say like, you know, a black American actor can't play like someone who's Jamaican, but like if someone who's Jamaican is just reliant on them having a good Jamaican accent, then it feels like that kind of like waters down the part. I guess in my eyes. But I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, Alexa, or if you heard about this casting.
Yeah, I did hear about it, and I think it's interesting because it's like kind of how you mentioned, it's a multi-level situation because it's like, well, there's an issue about the idea that most of the cast is not West African, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the sense that they are not Nigerian, they're not Ghanaian, they're not from Sierra Leone, they're diaspora black, like diaspora black people
Mm-hmm.
from the UK and from America. And then there's like the extra issue about the fact that Amanda Stanberg is mixed race, right? Like that she's also mixed American and mixed race, and like the kind of the feeling that she is like in a role. Like I think there's like a two-part conversation. A lot of people feel that like Disney is wrong to cast her, and she's wrong to audition and accept the part.
Mm-hmm.
That like she should, as somebody who's at least tried to say that she's like aware of like her position as a mixed race person in conversations with monoracial black people, but it's like it feels like this is a bit of a misstep. I think another issue I think some people feel is that like Amanda Stenberg has possibly overstayed her welcome in the YA space,
Maybe.
and that like she has kind of like, as once again like a mixed race black person, dominated a lot of roles for black actresses in young adult movies. And so I feel like there's like also this sort of maybe a little bit of fatigue in seeing her in these roles, because like she's now in her like late 20s.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a little bit of that as well. And like, you know, I saw somebody outright tweet like, can any of these people pronounce the NG sound properly, or like the MG sound properly? And I think like this is a fair critique, like you said, for accents. But I also, somebody brought up the idea that they should just like not do the accents. And honestly, I think that's fair. I honestly think that that's fair. Because like, even when you think about like mythology, that is like, case in point, a lot of, you know, mythology and fantasy movies that you see are based on like Greek mythology and or a lot of like Irish and Dutch, European mythology. But those people have British accents in a lot of those movies and stuff like that, right? Like, you know what I mean? Where it's a fantasy movie. There are dragons. There's, you know what I mean? Like, let's do whatever with the accents. Like, we don't really have to be super strict with it. But I like in general, I think it's an interesting question. I think at the end of the day, people are either going to go see the movie or they're not going to see the movie. However, I do think that if the movie isn't super successful, people who work at Disney are not going to blame the fact that they like cast Amanda Stenberg in the role. In their mind, they're going to be like, black movies like this just don't profit well, like just don't do well, right? Because I think that that's like already the fear and the concern is that this movie won't do well with international audiences. And that they're going to have to really rely on American and specifically like Black American audiences to come out and see this movie. I don't know what the budget is, but I fear that it's going to be way too inflated. And then they're going to like say, well, see, you know, we couldn't make these movies about Black people when it isn't, you know, financially successful. But I don't know. Like I said, I think people are either going to go see the movie or they're not going to see the movie. People who like the book are either going to go, you know, like support it or not support it. I don't think the Amanda Stenberg casting is a great idea. Honestly, I do not think it's a great idea. I feel like they should have definitely thought that out more. I don't think. And the other thing is too, and I could definitely be wrong about this, but I don't know if in casting her, the pros outweigh the cons, in the sense that like she is a famous actress. People are familiar with her. But I don't know if you know, she's not Zendaya in the sense that I don't know if the fame outweighs the backlash of her being mixed race. So like, I think that, I don't know, maybe it's not too late, honestly. Maybe it's not too late for them to rethink that. Because I do think that there are a lot of other, I'm sure there are other Nigerian actresses who would be very fit for the role, whether they be British or American as well. Like, you know what I mean? I just definitely think that they could have thought this through a little bit more. And when I say they, I also do include Amanda. Like, I think like she has to remember that like while also being mixed race, when you are like an actress who at least presents as Black, you do need to an extent stay in our good graces. Like, this is just the reality of like being a Black entertainer, is that piss off Black people if you want to. It's not gonna go well for you.
That's true.
Like I feel like that, you know what I mean? Like it's a reality of being a Black entertainer that like we don't like to say, but it is just the truth. There is a long list of Black entertainers who thought that they could
say whatever
or say whatever, do whatever, like kind of fly in the face
Isaiah Washington
of like Trey Songz, of like Black audiences who supported them and thought that there would not be any sort of like backlash to that. And so it's just like I said, I wonder how this plays out. I think it would be very big of her to maybe relinquish the role and maybe take a smaller supporting role, or, you know, sort of cameo situation. But I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't somebody who was really that interested in the movie to begin with.
Yeah.
But I definitely will be asking my friends who are big on sci-fi and fantasy movies and who were fans of the book if this is going to make them rethink going to see the movie.
Yeah, I do agree with you on the point of Amanda Stenberg kind of overseeing her welcome when it comes to playing like films that are based off YA books because she is a lot older now. Like I think her, Yara, and Zendaya are very close in age,
Mm-hmm.
and like Zendaya is off doing more adult roles. She has Euphoria, she's done Challengers, and Amanda did Bodies, 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 and she was also in The Acolyte. So I don't feel like there is a shortage of roles for her. I feel like she could, if she wanted to, search for more roles that like fit something in a more mature level rather than continue doing YA like films that are from YA books. And I also remember when Black Panther was out and she made this whole post on Instagram about how she didn't go and audition for it because she felt like the role should have gone to someone who was dark skinned, someone who fit
Mm-hmm.
the role of Black Panther. And at that point, people felt like that was very performative for her to say because she didn't have to say that. But in my mind, I was just like, I mean, maybe she's learning, maybe she's understanding because if you look on Netflix or any streaming service, or I would just use Netflix as an example because they have a whole barrage of like teen shows, but the black best friend is always someone who's light skinned or racially ambiguous. So
Yeah.
there is a shortage of monoracial black actresses that are out there. Of course, they're out there, but it's very clear that like
There's
they're
not a lot
not.
of roles for them and not a lot
Mhm,
of work for
that's
them.
true.
Yeah.
Exactly that. And so Children of Blood and Bone would have been a perfect opportunity to cast someone who is a young black actress. If they weren't going to cast Nigerian actors and actresses, then you can cast black American, black British actors if that's what you desire to do, because you're probably right. Relying on new talent for a movie of this size, it's possible that Disney did not feel that new talent would have brought people into the box office. So
Exactly.
relying on established talent, brings people in, and, American audiences will come and watch it if it doesn't perform well internationally, which I can understand from a business perspective. And there's also the possibility that the movie may not do well. And because Disney is moving towards this point, it seems like Disney is moving towards a point where they're becoming a lot more conservative in their media, with like the success they've seen from Deadpool Wolverine and now the revival of Robert Downey Jr. as Mr. Doom, and them making a lot of decisions in terms of like removing LGBT characters from their films. It's very clear that they're moving to a point in the films that they create that they're not going to be so open about diversity. So Children of Blood and Bone is possible if this film does not do well. This is going to be like, well, I mean, maybe we don't need to make these movies for the next 10 years,
Yeah.
So,
And that's like the fear I have
mhm.
that, it's like they're going to be set up.
Yeah.
Because but even like I said, with this idea of like maybe you wanted to have somebody who had some star power or like, some sort of, I just feel like was Kiki Lane not available?
Mm.
Like she was in the old car. Like, you know what I mean? Was she not?
Yes.
Could
Yeah.
y'all not have called? Was Lovey Simone from Sailor in the Spades not available? I haven't seen her into something in a minute. You know what I mean? I just feel like I don't believe, and that's the other thing too. I also wonder if we're going to begin to hear leaks of other young dark-skinned black actresses who also auditioned for this role. Because if I were their PR, if I was Kiki Lane or Lovey like Simone's PR people or another like or like a I don't know the actress's name, but the girl who's on the Bridgerton show who plays the young lady Danbury.
Oh, I know what
Like,
actress you're talking about. I don't know her name
yeah, but
either.
it's like, you know what I mean? If I was
Yeah.
one of these young women's PR team, I would, and my actress had auditioned for that role and Amanda Sternberg got it, I'd
Mm.
be sick. I'd be like, we're leaking that shit to the rest today.
Somebody
We're
call Vanity
stirring the
Fair.
pot tonight. Like,
Yes.
nah.
Yeah, I can understand that frustration because I feel like Zendaya has talked about how, there are times where she has gotten a role or been offered a role, and if she feels like a darker skinned actress can play it, then she'll step back. But I
Mhm.
remember There was this movie that Yara Shahidi was in. It was based off a book. I don't remember the name, but
The sun is also a star or whatever.
yep, it's that one. Because the character she played is Jamaican, like
Hmm.
from Jamaica to
And
black
I'm
parents.
seeing it's based on a true story,
Uh
and it's
huh.
like the lady and her husband are both authors, and he's also written YA books. And I've seen pictures of them, and I was like, okay, I could see
Mm,
him for him. I can see, but they but it's like, once again, I think it's like also my issue, and one of the things that I want to like continue to hit home about the Amanda Sternberg thing and the Yara Shahidi thing is that it's not just that Amanda Sternberg and Yara Shahidi are light skinned, they are mixed race.
hmm.
And I feel like that's more sometimes the issue than the fact that they are light skinned. It's the fact that they are light skinned and they are also mixed race. And it's like the recasting of like, or not even the recasting, the decision to cast a
Hmm.
mixed race person for like you said, a monoracial dark skinned Jamaican woman feels even more insidious, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, than the decision to just cast somebody who's like a light skinned popular actress.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you can be black, but not too black.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Yes, yes. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to watch the movie. I probably won't because I did read the book when it first came out, and I feel like
Mhm.
I enjoyed it for the most part. But at the time, I think I was at a study group or something, and one of the people who were helping me study, she's Nigerian, and she saw me reading the book. She's like, "Why are you reading that?" And I was like, "Oh, I just like the book." She's like, there's no Z in the Yoruba language, right?" And I was like, and she just brought that out. When like you're talking about something in a conversation and someone just says something, they blurt it out, and she's like, "That
Like
was
this, you could tell that this is something that's been on her heart heavy for a long time.
yes."
And that's the other thing too. That's what I'm saying. Like I've seen a lot, in the wake of this news, a lot of people being much more comfortable airing their grievances with the book. And so,
Hmm.
like I said, I'm wondering how this is gonna go. I'm wondering how it's gonna go.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's gonna go well for the movie. I feel like I want it to succeed and I want it to do well because of course I want black talent to like thrive and get a chance to like, have it stay in the box office. But if it's done poorly and if it's done in a way where it feels like certain decisions are upsetting the people who would support it genuinely, then it's kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's out of my hands at this point, like I know you're coming from a good place, but the attention is like it's not enough in the decisions that are being made. So but we'll just have to wait and see what happens when the movie does come out. And speaking of film releases, there are a couple of films that are out right now in the box office. One film that's doing very well in at least the domestic box office is Flight Risk. It's the newest Mark Wahlberg film. I think it's directed by Mel Gibson. Yeah, it's directed by Mel Gibson, starring
Yes.
Mark Wahlberg, and it's a movie about. I think a guy is getting it. They're transporting a criminal essentially,
Hmm.
and there is a woman there. I don't know if she's a cop, she's an army ranger, but
Yeah, I think
she's
she like works for the FBI, or yeah, she's like the agent of the state that is transporting said criminal.
right. And so,
It's the Lady Mary from Downton Abbey.
yeah, I think she's like a marshal or something.
Yeah,
But
it's a very conservative movie because it's like
mm,
everyone involved in it is like conservative.
yeah, yeah, it's
But it's interesting because it's like it made $15 million, so that made it number one at the box office. But like $15 million isn't great because I think on its budget, uh,
is that
because like
covering? Yeah,
because this is their opening weekend.
yeah. I mean, it's a strong start, but it's not as strong as it could be. Basically, I
Let
think
me see, Flight Risk. The
Flight Risk.
budget was 25 million, so they made 15 this opening week.
Oh, I mean, they're probably gonna break even pretty soon.
Yeah, to break even, you have to make like your budget plus and then half.
Yeah. They may just
So
meet the mark. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting how this plays out,
hmm.
uh, because conversely, one of these days is like number two at the box office. I don't know how much it made this weekend, but I know it made back its $14 million budget in its first week.
Hmm. Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. It did really well at the box office, which I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't surprised that was it was gonna do well because SZA is in the movie, and SZA has
Yeah,
like
and she's a really like yeah. I think that was so under like under like reported. The idea that
yeah,
like oh, a person who's had several number one albums will
mm,
be a box office
mm,
draw.
mm, like literally, like people have been bumping Shirt, Good Days, Kill Bill for like a full year, maybe even 2 years. So I mean, it made sense. Also, Kiki Palmer is like an internet sensation. So to have those two women leading your film, it just makes sense.
I went to go see One of Them Days last week and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was so fun. And I really also loved Rap Shit, which
Yeah.
was also written by Sarita Singleton, who wrote One of Them Days.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think she just really has a good eye for comedy and like buddy comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think her and Issa Rae, as good as like Kiki Palmer and SZA were a great team in front of the camera,
Mm-hmm.
Issa Rae and Sarita Singleton are like a winning combination behind the camera. And they should be given like a blank check to be making more buddy comedies. I was like talking to my friend the other day about how I rewatched Jackie's Back, which is like a comedy parody starring Jennifer Lewis, and it also has like Whoopi Goldberg in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying how like Whoopi Goldberg and Jennifer Lewis had such great chemistry. If we had been in a fair world, they would have gotten to be in a buddy comedy where they played like two sisters who had been married to the same man. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like it's not too late. It's not too late for that to happen. And I really think that this could be a really, like, you know, how we were talking earlier about Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler and
Yeah.
Jordan Peele and Daniel Kaluuya working together. Sarita Singleton and Issa Rae could go so far making like Black buddy comedies
Mm-hmm.
that are once again they have the winning formula that is just like has always worked, which is like once again you don't need to reinvent the wheel. They're
True.
doing what has always made money. They're making like mid-budget comedies
Mm-hmm.
that do well at the box office.
Yes.
And if we were in a world that like pushed physical media more, this is also a movie that could make a bunch of money on like DVDs.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know the DVD would slap too. Like the
Oh, if
cover,
they
the
make, I hope
inside.
they make a Blu-ray because I would like one. I would like one.
Also, the blooper reel would be hilarious.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I loved the movie so much. I want to be able to watch it again and again and again. Like, I
Yes.
think it was like the perfect marriage of Baps and Friday.
Yeah, honestly, I can't wait to go see the movie. I'm very excited to see it, and I love everything Issa Rae's making. And I just wish
Mhm.
that David Zaslav would get out of her way and let her make what she wants to make, because she already has the blank check theoretically from Max with her deal with them. So if they just kind
Yeah.
of like give her the freedom to do and not cancel her shows after every 2 season, like let them live, then I feel like we would see more successful projects from her. Because One of Them Days does look like a lot of fun, and from your review, I'm a bit more excited to watch it. Honestly, yes.
Honestly, like in my mind, I feel like Max and the people who canceled Rap Shit, like they
Mm,
look like a fool.
mm,
Can't like imagine if Rap Shit had been renewed for a third season, coming off of the success of One of Them Days. Like I think they look foolish for canceling the show now.
yeah, absolutely. They do look foolish. And I think the last new release I'm very interested in is Watson. It's a new CBS original starring Morris Chestnut. He is playing Dr. John Watson, as in Dr. John Watson from the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I think I was interested in this mainly because, like, I love the Sherlock Holmes stories. I love the Robert Downey Jr. movies. I loved Sherlock Holmes on BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch, Martin Freeman, yes. And then Elementary starring Lucy Liu and well, I forgot the actor's name, but I did love that show. So
And see, that's the other thing too, because you're right. I had forgotten that those were two separate shows. In
yeah,
my mind, Lucy Liu and Benedict Cumberbatch had both been on Elementary. I
no,
forgot that there were like I don't really watch network TV shows that much. I'm not even
mm,
gonna hold you. I really don't. So everything that was going, especially CBS shows, I'm sorry,
mm,
like everything that's happened on CBS over the last like 20 years feels like a fever dream.
yeah, That's true. I'm actually surprised that people watched Matlock because I saw that that was getting a remake, and I was like, oh, I like Kathy Bates, but I don't know if that's for me. And I
I
think she
watched the
got.
first episode and I was a little intrigued.
Mhm.
However, it took Matlock to a second level when it revealed a side plot that I was shocked by.
I love that about CBS shows because they can't show nudity, they can't curse too much, but they're gonna do the most with the plot because people have to watch.
You know what? I think you're exactly right because
Yeah,
spoiler alert, I want to reveal what the side plot is because it was like, I'm sorry, it's revealed in the first episode, so I don't think this is too much of a spoiler.
go for it.
So like obviously it's the Matlock setup that you see in the like commercials where like she maneuvers her way into getting a position at this law firm.
Hmm.
And when they ask her like why she wants it, she's basically saying like, "Hey, I need the money because I now have custody of my grandson."
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's sad. Of course, let's hire old lady Matlock.
Hmm.
But then we later see her go home to a palatial estate and we see her greet her husband. It's like, oh, he's not dead. Okay, great. And then we do see the grandson that she has custody of. And we now see that Kathy Bates' Matlock has maneuvered her way into getting a job at this law firm because one of the three partners at this law firm is was instrumental in allowing the opioid crisis to continue. And their daughter died of an opioid overdose. And they blame said law partner of the law firm. And she's now investigating on the side which law firm partner it was so they can take her down, him or her down.
Wait. Okay, now I have to watch it because wait.
That's what I was saying. I was like, not too much on Matlock because I might be locked in on that. I watched that first episode and I was like, wait.
Oh my gosh, I have so many. And this is another thing about CBS shows. They introduce plots that are so interesting, but when you bring the real world into it, it's like, wait, hold on. If I was sued by somebody for something I did, wouldn't I remember who that was? And, well, they're probably sued by a lot of people, so let me not.
That's what I'm saying. That's the thing.
Yeah.
When the plot gets too complicated and you really have to watch every single episode and pay attention to every single thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Okay, man, you've convinced me. I'm going to watch Matlock later on. I'm going to put that on my watch list. Okay, awesome. Well, guys, that was Media Mania. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the meat and potatoes of the podcast, talking about the best movies of 2024. And honestly, 2024 was a pretty strong year for films. And I feel like there were a lot of movies to pick from to see, like, what was the best. And I just want to say, we're not doing the best based off of, like, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, Robert. We're not doing that. It's our best picks for 2024. It's movies that we think are the best and that we like. So we're going to go first with Alexa's pick. So, Alexa, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody your picks for 2024?
Yes, and I just want to add an additional caveat for my list.
Hmm.
Monica sent me her list of best movies of 2024 first, so I didn't want to include any movie on my list that I already saw that she had,
Mm-hmm.
just to create so we wouldn't have any duplicates. So I want to start, I guess, like at the beginning, like in chronological order. Furiosa. I feel like this movie got so forgotten because it came out like in near the beginning of the year and it didn't do really well financially,
Mm-hmm.
but this movie I think is so good. I think it works like really well with Mad Max Fury Road. I think you know what George Miller is I say has done with the Mad Max like
Yeah, George Miller.
yeah franchise is honestly like really fascinating because it's kind of his life's work.
Mm.
Like he's 79 years old. The likelihood that he's going to be making a lot more movies or especially another franchise of this like caliber is just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like his life's work being these films, I think it's just a phenomenal legacy. And if this is the last Mad Max movie he ever gets to make, I think it is just a beautiful chef's kiss to the entire franchise. I also think Chris Hemsworth is so good in the movie. He's like
Yeah.
a great actor who is good at playing freaky, weird little dudes. But because he is so conventionally handsome,
Yes.
he doesn't get the William Dafoe casting
Mm-hmm.
that he deserves.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he has like a lot of like health concerns that have slowed his career down. So and only God knows how much he'll be working over the next the rest of his life. But I think this performance was fantastic, and I'd love to see him playing like more little weirdos like this. Anya Taylor-Joy was also really great, and I love her, and I would love to see her in more movies that are not made off of intellectual property.
I think Anya Taylor-Joy did really great in this movie as well, but I feel like she's kind of been like, I don't know if typecast is the right word, but a lot of the films she's been in are kind of like feminine, like young dainty, like oh my gosh, I'm so small. But like this film, she is literally taking power back in this movie, and I feel like it's a really great role for her because I remember when she first got cast, I had seen her previous films, and I was like, this feels a little like out of place in her filmography, but she proved me wrong. She did amazing in this one. I should have shut up. I don't know why I said anything.
She is great. I think my only knock about Furiosa is I think the first act with where the Furiosa character is a child is like tad too long.
Yeah.
Tad too long, but that's like really my only knock. The other movie from near the beginning of the years that I liked is Dune Part 2. I recently, like last year, started to try to watch more sci-fi movies, and the Dune movies were on my list. I watched Denis Villeneuve's Part 1 and Part 2 with Timothy Chalamet, and I do really like the Dune movies now, but I think they work best for me when they are like political thrillers. I don't really care that much about like a lot of the other stuff aspects of the movie, but when that movie is like working as like a political thriller, that is when it's like firing on all cylinders for me. I'm really interesting. I don't know, like I've never read the books, but I am vaguely familiar with the universe of like Dune, and I think the way that Denis Villeneuve has trimmed down a lot of the fat from the initial, like the original work, is brilliant, honestly. But I'm really interesting to see if he's able to like nail the dismount, because this is a franchise that gets like super weird, and I'm wondering if he's going to be able to pull off like the full worm of it all.
The full worm. That's funny.
The full worm. And I'm also really interested to see how he'll continue to use Zendaya's character. Also, another movie I liked from like earlier part of the year was Blink Twice. I feel like this was like a movie that a lot of people did enjoy, but hasn't, and I did see on a lot of people's year-end lists, but I don't think like, it was not in like awards conversation, but it was definitely, I think Blink Twice was very similar to Challengers. It was like an early spring movie that, wasn't in awards conversations for real, but did really excite people, and I love to see people get like excited about movies. But I also think Blink Twice is interesting because like one of my friends has like a great theory that she talked about with Olivia Wilde about how a lot of mediocre actors make much better directors. And the more I thought about it, I think she's like really onto something, because there's like Clint Eastwood, there's Kevin Costner, there's Olivia Wilde, and now it kind of feels like the same thing is happening with
Zoe Kravitz.
With Zoe Kravitz. With Zoe Kravitz, because it's like I've never been really blown away by any of her performances. I think like one of her best performances is probably in Kimmy, the Steven Soderbergh movie she made for Max. But she has a much like a really sharp eye, I think, in the directing. I think the construction of Blink Twice is really well done. I think the editing was really sharp. I really liked Blink Twice as a movie, and I'd be interested in like the next movie she made. The other thing that I really liked, and I think this kind of plays into our conversation about Amanda Sternberg. I really appreciated the fact that with this opportunity that she had, she casted Naomi Aki for her lead. Like I really liked that she was like, while I've got this opportunity, I'm gonna cast like a dark-skinned Black woman for our lead, and using my famous boyfriend in here to help get this budget. I really appreciated that. And I like I said, I really liked Blink Twice. I'm really excited to see what movie she's able to like make next.
Mm.
Uh, but I think like my movie of the year
Mm.
was The Substance. I loved The Substance. Like I'm really rooting for Demi Moore to win the Academy Award, either her or Fernanda Torres. I think
Mm.
that's how you say her name from I'm Still Here. I really enjoyed Demi Moore's performance. I think her and Margaret Qualley were fantastic. I think it's kind of a shame that Margaret Qualley got left out of the Best Supporting Actress conversation
Yeah.
because her and Demi carried in this movie. Coralie Farragut was her direction was fantastic. Like
Mm.
her eye also is very very sharp. I am very excited for her next movie. So far, 2 movies in, she is like no fear. There's like
Mm.
no fear in what she is willing to like put on camera and frame on screen. And I think I'm so excited to see like the weird movies that she's going to make. I think like, obviously The Substance was like a really horrific body horror movie,
Yes.
but it
Yes.
was also very, very funny and very witty. And the commentary was just like so sharp and blatant and in your face. I think The Substance was like truly the movie of the year. It
Mm.
has a very minimal shot of winning Best Picture, but I would like scream if it was able to like pull that off. Uh I also really liked Trap. I know
Mm.
Trap was like controversial, but I think Trap and Juror Number Two shared a lot of DNA in the sense that both movies uh played with like reality in order to heighten the stakes, but
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed Trap more. It was very fun. Josh Hartnett was fun.
Yeah.
I love the way that M. Night Shyamalan is using like these weird, freaky sci-fi scripts to work through his feelings about love and fatherhood. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I think, like a very sweet movie about a serial killer. Uh, and then I also enjoyed Nosferatu, which I did not expect to. I went to go see that kind of on a whim
Okay.
because I have not really liked Robert Eggers movies for real.
Okay.
I saw The Witch for Movie Club. We watched it and I just didn't really like it. But it's grown on me.
Uh-huh.
It's grown on me. And I think it's because it wasn't the horror movie that I thought it was going to be, like The
Mm-hmm.
Witch wasn't, but the Witch has grown on me. I want to revisit The Northman now because I love Nosferatu so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lily Rose Depp was great in it. I think Nicholas Hoult was great. I really, really enjoyed the way he adapted Nosferatu. I also don't. I see his next project is supposed to be Labyrinth. I do not like the original Labyrinth, even though I
Mm-hmm.
know it's like kind of a cult classic. But I am, I like Nosferatu enough where I'm like, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. And then I think like the last movie on my list is one of the movies that I just recently saw, which was Nickel Boys. I think Nickel Boys was like fascinating. Like it was just so inventive and imaginative. I remember when the story broke that the Nickel Boys is based off of
Mm-hmm.
the Dozier School in Florida. I
Yeah.
remember when the bodies were initially found and just being like so blown away at the story. And Colson Whitehead is a phenomenal writer, and the book was so popular
Mm-hmm.
that Ramel Ross had so much to live up to when he was adapting that book to make it into a movie. And what he was able to do, it's just like it just truly blew me away with like how inventive and imaginative it was. But it was also like really inspired by Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, which is like this other sort of kind of experimental coming of age story about a quintessential American family and how it wasn't as picture perfect as it may have appeared. And I think Nickel Boys is like a really interesting answer to that movie and like an interesting Black perspective on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I said, I think what Ramel Ross did is fantastic. And also, similarly, I hate that Aunjanue Ellis got left out of the Best Supporting Actress conversation at
Yeah.
the Oscars because she's so good in
She is
Nickel
so
Boy. She is
good.
like the heart and soul of that movie. And I really love Nickel Boys. I think it's like a strange movie that, like, because it's shot in this POV
Mm-hmm.
style, can be so different than what you're used to seeing at the movies. But I think it's a fantastic movie that honestly I'd recommend for anybody to go see if you are able to get to see it. But also, even if you can't go see it, you can read the script on Vanity Fair's website.
Oh, okay, cool.
Actually, you can read the scripts to a lot of the movies from 2024 on Vanity Fair's website. They have like a little, I think it's like behind the slate or behind the something like that
Hmm.
series going on where you can read scripts to a lot of popular movies. Because I think you can also read the Challenger script,
Yeah.
like a bunch of them. It's great.
Cool. So I did want to ask like a couple questions to you. First things first, you did say that you're not really a huge fan of sci-fi films. So I guess I'm curious to see like what was it besides the political thriller aspect of Dune Part 2, what else stood out to you in this movie that could possibly make you consider checking out more sci-fi films?
I think like one of the things I did like about what uh Denis Villeneuve has been able to do with like some of his sci-fi adaptations
Hmm.
is he's makes them very visually stunning, but he doesn't bog them down in too much lore.
Right.
Like I said, like he's trimmed a lot of the fat from Dune and streamlined it and made it a lot less confusing, because I think that
Hmm.
that's the other thing sometimes with a lot of sci-fi and fantasy movies is that it feels like the barrier to entry can be high,
Yeah.
especially if you haven't like read the books.
Hmm.
And a lot of times the movies have to anticipate that like audience hasn't read the books.
Hmm.
So you then have to do a lot of like exposition to explain everything. And I think the way that Denis Villeneuve is very quickly explains the history between like the Harkonnens and like these other families, it's very, very streamlined.
Hmm.
But I think that's just like good storytelling. And I think that that's sometimes the issue with like a lot of movies in general is that like the scripts are just not as sharp as they could be and as well constructed as they could be. And a lot of sci-fi movies, I think, like have that issue.
Yeah, that is true because for a lot of people with like the introduction of like the Star Wars spin-offs, like the Boba Fett show, Mandalorian, all those shows like Ahsoka, a lot of times people feel like they can't watch them because they don't know Star Wars, they don't know who Ahsoka
Mm-hmm.
is, so they feel like they have to like do homework and study before even watching the show to really like understand what's going on. But I do agree with you that like Villeneuve, he does an awesome job of basically breaking it down so people can just like understand what's going on and they get it, but they get it enough so they can watch the movie and they can, kind of go along for the ride and they see what's going on. And I think I really enjoyed that, especially with like Florence Pugh's character. I feel like she did a really great job in this
Loved
movie.
her.
I feel like she really can do anything. Like she was in Dune Part 2, she was in We Live in Time,
Mm-hmm.
like she's really doing a great job of just like kind of shipping from genres to genres in terms of films. Like I love to see her in just about everything.
And she's working so much.
Yeah. Yes. She deserves it, honestly. She's doing great. And I did want to ask also Nosferatu. I also love Nosferatu. I felt like it was a really great movie. I'm just curious, like, I feel like it does feel like a very Eggers film. Like it's dark, it's spooky, it's moody. But I guess I'm interested to see like what is it about Nosferatu that made you feel like, you know what, Eggers isn't that bad of a director. I should give him another chance.
I think what really turned me on with like with this one in versus like some of his other movies is I
Hmm.
think that this one was very dark, but I feel like it was still just not as dreary. Like I think there's definitely comedic elements in all of his movies, but
Hmm.
I think this one leaned a little bit more into some of that stuff, and I think that that helped having like William Dafoe there. Like he was a lot of the comedic relief in this movie.
Hmm.
Uh, I also think that Lily Rose Depp's got to do a little bit more of a like interesting like there this had like it vacillated more in tone. I think more too like I think some of the other Eggers movies are very very slow to
Hmm.
build and then have like one maybe bigger moment sort of like near the end. I feel like this one had like a little interesting actions throughout.
Yeah.
I think also like I just really enjoyed, like I said, like Lily Rose Depp and Nicholas Hoult. I also think like this is not even just like a knock on his other films because his other films are also very well made and
Hmm.
well lit. But I think it was fantastic how well lit this movie was, given how
Yes.
much he used candlelight
Hmm.
and how like I think this is a really great example of how this movie is dark and it's dreary, but it's not like it's still well lit. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, no shade, but when you compare the dark, like we're in the night scenes in Nosferatu to night scenes in Wicked,
Hmm.
crazy difference. Crazy
Yeah.
difference. Especially when you consider the fact that like Eggers is out here using fucking candlelight.
Yeah, I feel like because he's so familiar with using that kind of scenery in his films, he has the eye for like lighting and understands like how to properly light it so that people can at least understand like what's going on and see like the shadow of the person that's there, which I also love. And I remember I was watching Nosferatu and I was thinking about like I guess repression in like the 19th century
Mm-hmm.
and how her character, Lily Rose Depp's character, she does seem fairly like lonely, even though she's married. But I feel like previously, like with like loneliness and like I'm guessing like her psychic abilities, that paired with like finding her husband, I was just watching it and I was trying to understand like, should we feel like Count Orlok is, I don't know, helping her reclaim her power or is he like exploiting her? Because sometimes I feel like he's like taking advantage of her vulnerability and her loneliness, but sometimes I'm like maybe this is her way of like breaking out of it and like embracing the fact that like she's a little weird, like is this like her kind of moving into this new personhood or is this like girl, leave that man alone, like don't worry about that. I don't know. I was just curious to get your thoughts on it because I was thinking about that when I was watching the movie.
It's so, I guess, yeah, like I said, I've seen so much conversation about it, and I know people have like different feelings about it, but personally, I definitely don't see it as like Ellen and Count Orlok having like a romance so much
Mm-hmm.
as like I do kind of see like there's a part in the movie where she talks about how like how she was so lonely after her mother died and she feels like he took advantage of her loneliness, how she called him to her because of her like deep city loneliness. And I think like also like yeah, it is like a metaphor for her own repression, but I think it's like a metaphor of how, especially how uh as somebody who's very familiar with Regency romance novels, about how like a lot of there was this entire category of like rakes, men who were able to take advantage of the fact that women were so sexually repressed and were
Mm-hmm.
so naive about sex and romance that they could easily take advantage of these women. So I guess like that's kind of more how I see it. I think like I think that because like that's how I feel kind of about like the original Nosferatu. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's been some sort of conflation between Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is different than Nosferatu. It's like it borrows a lot from it, but it is different. Uh, but like yeah, like I did like Nosferatu, and I do think that like Count Orlok is a bad guy. Like like he is. I think he is the villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think when I was watching it, I was just kind of I guess I like the vulnerability and I'm not gonna lie, William Dafoe, he's so perfect in everything that he does. And him playing like the little weirdo that like knew so much about like the vampires and the occult, I was like, yeah, he's right there. He's got it. He's got it. He's in his bag right now. I
That's what I'm
just
saying. I'm interested to see how the labyrinth thing plays out. Like I said, even though I don't like the original, I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah. I also think that Nosferatu is like it was the film that made me realize like Lily Rose Depp is a good actress. Because I don't think I'd
Yeah.
seen her in anything else. But seeing her in Nosferatu, I was like,
Yeah, I
oh,
hadn't really seen her in anything else either because I had not watched The Idol.
mm-hmm. Yes. But I do love it when Nicholas Holt plays like the most pathetic little man.
I love Nicholas Hoult. I think he's been on
Yes.
a great run.
Yeah. I love him too. I adore him. And I did want to ask, because I saw Blink twice on your list, and I'm not gonna lie, it actually wasn't my favorite movie of 2024 because I think I was excited to watch it for Zoe Kravitz and obviously Naomi Aki because I love her acting. But I think the ending is what tripped me up a little bit because throughout the full movie, I think like the concept is so stellar. Like these girls meet this rich billionaire at this gala and like they're partying all the time. And immediately I thought like, when are y'all gonna go home? Y'all can't live here. You don't know these people. But then, of course, they realize like something else is going on, and then I feel like with the ending, with Naomi Aki's character kind of like almost taking the place of Slater, I was trying to like understand it because I feel like maybe this is like dark cynicism in a way, or maybe this is like a girl boss moment. But I feel like I was kind of iffy on the ending, and it made me feel like kind of like unsure if this is a movie that I really enjoy, or if maybe this is a movie that like I should revisit another time. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I like the ending because Naomi Aki's character isn't a good person. And we know
Mm.
that in like the very beginning of the movie that she's not a
Uh,
good person. Cause like I think the very beginning of the movie is like that's why I said I think the editing and like the construction of the movie is like so sharp because
mm,
the movie opens with Naomi Aki's character looking and scrolling on like TikTok and like the internet. And so she's seeing these videos about how Slater King is apologizing. And then she
mm,
goes and Googles him. And
mm,
all the articles are about his sexual misconduct allegations and his phony ass apology.
yeah.
And then we cut to her getting ready to like go work at this gala where he's going to be at. And
Mm,
she's so pressed to meet him. So, like, our opening introduction to this character is that she knows about these sexual misconduct allegations against Slater,
right.
and she's still desperate as fuck to meet him.
Yeah.
And then later in the movie, there's a moment where they're on the island where she reaches for steak and then she puts it back because he says he doesn't eat beef. And now she won't eat beef. She won't eat, or she won't eat meat, or it's like, you know what I mean?
Mm,
And so it's like, that is the thing. I feel like the movie is critiquing the idea of like these kind of women who we
mm,
all know, and women who like some of us are, who have heard terrible allegations about men and still dated them,
mm,
or who have contorted ourselves to please men who we knew were controlling. Like, you know what I mean? In that moment when she puts it back, she knows it's because like she's afraid of his judgment. And it's like, why are you so desperate to appease somebody who you know
it's
is
terrible.
is terrible?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the whole point. Like, she's not a good person. So of course, but it's like that. You don't have to be a good person to not also be a victim. Like, that's, I think that's the other thing too. I think sometimes people, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes people wanted her to be a perfect victim, but it's
Yeah.
like, I don't think there would have been happy with like a lot of endings, because I think if she had killed him, I think that would have been also a somewhat disliked ending by some people, right?
Mm,
But
that's
also,
true.
I also really, like I said, I really like the ending that they go with, because I feel like killing him is too easy, one,
Mm,
and it doesn't recognize what killing him would look like for somebody who looks like Naomi Aki's character.
that's true.
It's like, if she kills him, how is she going to explain what the fuck has happened on this island?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, what she decides to do is honestly the best solution for the situation they're in. Of like, we've got to use his money and his whiteness to get this cleaned up and get the fuck out of here at least.
That is true because she is on a deserted island. So, like, if she kills him, all of his friends are there. So they're just going to be like, oh, she was the problem. She was the issue. And then she's going to end up in jail. And if she tries to say, like, oh, he did this, he did that, so they're not going to believe her because they
And
can
it's
easily
only
try
her
to.
and the other girl who are now the survivors. Nobody's
Yeah,
going to believe them.
that's true.
No one's going to believe anything they say about that fucking island. They're going to think you girls took advantage of these men and you
Hmm.
killed them. And
Yeah.
you're not, like, you know what I mean? Like,
That is so true. And you're right. In the beginning of the movie, she did still like seek him out. And I remember watching it, and I was like, now, girl, why are we doing this?
she was
'Cause-
not just, she was pressed,
yeah.
which is like one of the things that, like, near the end in his monologue that he kind of brings up as well, where he's like, you know, you had such a good time. You wanted to come back. He's like, you know what I mean? Like, you still were super pressed.
Hmm.
He's like, it's proof that it worked. You didn't remember.
Hmm. Yeah, that is true. Okay. I think I appreciate your thoughts on the ending because I feel like when I was watching it back, I felt a little bit weird because you're right. A lot of times, like, people kind of expect the perfect victim in these kind of stories, but I think that it makes sense that she did kind of like take his spot almost because when her friend was missing, I think she cared a little bit, but she didn't really care like as much. I feel like if my friend was gone, I would have been like a little bit more worried. And then when she found out everything was going on, it's like, not me blinking. Sorry.
Well, no, it is, because it's like from the, like you said, when her friend went missing,
Mm.
she wasn't concerned enough, because it's like, you're not only on this island and I can't find my friend anymore. You're on
Yeah.
an island with a man who has admitted to
Mm.
some very serious sexual misconduct allegations. Like,
Right.
that's the other thing too. It's like, it's not just where, because I think that's like one of the things that I think is so interesting about the movie is that, like, you watch them come to the realization of what's happening, even though the realization is so obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of the fact that they're on an island with like these rich men, it's because they're on an island with rich men who have already been caught red-handed,
Mm-hmm.
like doing what they think they're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I feel like that's like one of the, like, you know what I mean? Like, these aren't just any man, these are men who've already done this. And I think that that's like one of the most interesting proponents of like parts of the movie, is that, like, yeah, it's like this commentary on this idea of like cancel culture or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more so this idea of like, you're not really canceled. It's like there was all these women who were still willing to hang out with Slater,
Yeah.
even though they all knew what he was about. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like that's the truth of the situation, is that about how, like, I think like that's what I think is like one of the sharpest parts about it. It's like how I think this and Knives Out kind of point out how capitalism is so insidious that people will put themselves in situations that, in like Squid Games too, about like, you know, that they know are dangerous, that they know are bad,
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of money.
Yeah. Because I think, oh, not me. Like, I'll be fine. I'll be good. It's like, 9 tenths out of 10, you might be the one who is going to be in trouble. You know?
Exactly. But it's like, I think that's the risk people are willing to take. I think a lot of times they know, but it's like, that's the risk I'm willing to take.
Yeah. And I do agree with you because Zoe Kravitz, I feel like she has been acting for a long time. And for the most part, I feel like she's been like a good actor. You know,
Yeah. Like, okay.
she's been some good roles, but she is a better director.
Yeah.
Yes.
And okay, because also this is the other thing too, back to what I was saying about like with Naomi Aki's character,
Mm-hmm.
if she's like kills Chris Slater, what's gonna happen to her next? I think it's so interesting because one of my biggest issues with Big Little Lies, the show that Zoe Kravitz was on and kind of like broke through on,
Yeah.
is that the show casted, I mean not casted, show cast Zoe Kravitz to play this character, but then they didn't really recognize the implications of her being the only Black woman in
Yeah.
this group of women
Mm-hmm.
who or in some way who were right here as this man died,
Yeah.
right? Like, I feel like the fact that her character was Black and the fact that that would obviously change her position in that situation was like one of the things that, like, I just feel like it was such a missed opportunity of the show. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in some ways Zoe Kravitz herself recognized that, and she's like, you know what I mean? Like, a Black woman in this situation would have to think about like,
The repercussions.
yeah, like, how are we getting away? How are we getting out of here?
Yeah, because all the other women on the show, they're just kind of like, oh, well, he's gone. And they were like kind of haunted by what they did, but they weren't really that concerned over it. But like, if you're the only person there that could possibly be in a lot more trouble than they are, and
Come on.
you need to have some kind of protection, some kind of backup plan. Like, you need to be able to think about like what's going to happen to you because they could very easily throw you under the bus, and then you're the only person facing any kind of repercussions for it.
That's exactly it. You already know. Like, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of like films and TV shows they will cast like lighter skin or racially ambiguous like actors and actresses because like if something like that happens, they don't really want to acknowledge the race. They just kind of like want to like okay, well they're there, so you know we could just continue on the story as is.
And I
And
think a lot of times I truly believe this, that they
mhm,
like, you know, cast actors of color, like Black and Asian actors, Latino actors on the back end. Like,
mhm.
this character wasn't written to be Black, but here we go.
No,
Let's do it.
it happens every time, and I think
Mhm.
the only time they really acknowledged her blackness was when her mom came to visit in season 3, I think. But her mom was like a witch doctor, and it
Yeah,
was
it was like in season 2, yes. And
okay, season two.
yes, her mom was like, it was very magical Negro. It was crazy. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about her mom being there because she also has some issues with her mom and how her mom wasn't like We don't have to
Her
get
mom was
into
like a
it.
bad person, but it's like
Yeah.
fine. Her mom can be a bad person, but like let's make her make sense.
Yeah. Like, let's make, like, why is she there? Like, what's the purpose behind it? Okay. Oh, I did want to ask you a question about the substance because I actually did see this critique on Twitter the other day, and I was curious to see your thoughts. So I saw on Twitter, Todd in the Shadows, he's like a YouTuber. He tweeted out that he didn't really like the substance because he feels like a lot of older actresses get cast in these roles where they play the aging woman who's trying to feel young again. And for Demi Moore, who is like an older actress, finally be recognized for her work, for being in this film, it felt kind of like a slap in the face to her legacy. And I hadn't seen that critique before, but now that I think about it a little bit, I do kind of agree. And I see where he's coming from because Demi Moore has been in a lot of roles. Like, she's been in Hollywood for a long time. And for this to be her first Golden Globe win for The Substance seems like, why did it take so long to get here? You know? But I guess I want
I
to get your
mean,
opinion on it.
I feel like the role that should have definitely been here, I think it's like G.I. Jane and probably a Best Supporting Actress nom for A Few Good Men as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I agree that there should have been other opportunities for her, definitely. But it's like that's always been the case for a lot of actresses, especially, Demi Moore. I think it's like, people who are in our age range and younger don't remember how Demi Moore was discussed in the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah.
She was not an actress who was very well respected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she was kind of in the category of with like Sharon Stone and Kim Basinger, actresses who were like very sexy but weren't taken too
Seriously.
seriously, right? So I think that like that's the other thing too, is that like people didn't really have a high regard for her. And I think that that's interesting that people talk about that, because I see people make the exact same mistakes in talking about like younger actresses. I think about like the way people talk about I can't, what's her name from Euphoria?
Sydney Sweeney?
Yeah, the way sometimes people talk about Sydney Sweeney and other young actresses. I think in the same vein, I've seen some people talk about the hypocrisy of the fact that like a lot of older actresses who've clearly had a lot of work done, or who have clearly doing a lot to try to stay looking as young as possible, are in movies that critique aging and beauty. But at the same time, it's like, do you want these women to work or not? Because
Yeah.
it's like, if they wouldn't work, like these are not women who wouldn't work, because like, and then I'll see, this is another point that I want to get to later, but anyway, I'll see people make this critique, and I feel like it's very, very unfair, because in the same vein, I've seen some of these exact same people be very cruel in the way that they talk about younger and older actresses, the way that they discuss their face, their bodies, like the way there's 1,000 pages on TikTok that are literally dedicated to either recommending plastic surgery to famous people or to dissecting what plastic surgery they believe that they have had.
Yeah.
Like, the critique and the scrutiny then under which women who are in entertainment are under is absurd. And so it's like, I feel like when people say, well, it's kind of hypocritical that Demi Moore is in this movie, it's like, I don't think it is.
No.
If the fact that she has gone through the links that she has gone through at her big age, like she's 60 something years old and her character just turned 50. She's doing everything to look as young as she can. And that's proof that like she is Elizabeth Sparkles. Like, she is living her raps, you mean. But in the same vein, I will see sometimes people bring up actresses like Frances McDormand, who has very famously talked about how she has not gotten work done, not gotten Botox. And I think that this is a fair point for her to make. But when people discuss Frances McDormand, I also think it's important for people to like mention two other things, which is like, one, she's also an actress who, despite some great talent, went through a serious lull in her career like 10 years ago, where she was having to accept like 2-bit as roles, despite the fact that she was a Best Actress winner. She was not being offered the same kind of work that her fellow Best Actress winners, who were older and younger, were being offered. And it was because of this stance on not getting Botox and not getting plastic surgery. Two, she is married to what is arguably one of the greatest screenwriter / directors of his generation, in a Coen brother. And several of her most awarded and famous roles are in movies that they fucking wrote for her. If a lot of these actresses would have less problems too, if they had a husband who could crack open a book and then write them a fucking script based off of it.
Yeah, I mean, you are right because, like you said, there is such a scrutiny with how people look and how people present themselves that when an actress gets like any kind of work done, people nitpick it, or when she doesn't get work done, people are like, "Oh, she's old, she's aging like milk." It's both sides of the coin that seem very unfair because however which way you look at it, you're critiquing someone's look. You're critiquing like their appearance, even though if they change their appearance, you get upset with them for using the money that they earn through their job. If they don't fix their appearance, then you're just calling them ugly, old, and wrinkled.
Mhm.
And Demi Moore is a great person to play Elizabeth Sparkles because obviously she understands that through her own career and she understands where Elizabeth Sparkles has gone through as she's spoken about in many interviews. And also like Pamela Anderson being in The Last Showgirl, she's had like this revived career off of, her documentary and everything else that has happened recently. And to see her like I was kind of disappointed that she didn't get anything in the Oscars category, but she had stated in an interview with Martha Stewart that her win is in the work. And I think that's great to just see like these actresses get the chance to work and do the job that they love to do is amazing. Of course, recognition beyond anything else would be awesome because you want people to be recognized in like an audience of their peers for like what they've done and what they've accomplished. But either way, if they get the chance to continue to work and do what they do in whatever role that they have, I just hope that they're like satisfied in that work.
I agree. And also, this is the last thing I'm going to say, but I think one of my big awards hot takes is that I think you could make a strong argument that, especially given the films, in my opinion, are very similar, but not that strong, but are really based on how strong the performances are. I think you could really trade out Mikey Madison's performance award nomination for Nora and give it to Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl, because I don't think either movie is that great. But I do think both performances are very, very good. But I would argue that because of the second half of Honora and how a lot of that movie goes through a different like situation, I think that you could make a strong argument that Pamela Anderson's performance is more important to The Last Showgirl than Mikey Madison's is to Honora.
I'm going to be honest. I'm actually surprised that Honora got a nomination
It got a
because,
lot of nominations. Like it's
yeah.
got a Best Picture nomination. Sean Baker got a Best Director nomination. She's nominated for Best Actress. The guy who
hmm
played Boris got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. It got a lot of nominations. I wasn't very high on the movie personally.
hmm
Uh,
I know that was kind of like an indie darling when all the film festivals were happening, so I'm
yeah,
not surprised in that regard. But for it to get so many Oscar nominations is a surprise.
I guess what I think is the interesting thing about the Oscar nominations right now is that the movies that really did well at Cannes did perform well at the Oscars, in the sense like Emilia Perez, Honora,
hmm
like the Brutalist, like I don't know about the Brutalist, but Honora and Emilia Perez, definitely. Those two movies had great showings at Cannes, and they had strong showings with the Academy Award nominations. So,
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
but
Okay.
your best movies of 2024.
Yes. Okay, so we're gonna jump into my picks. So I'm gonna just kind of list them off real quick, get some
Mhm.
quick synopses, and then we could just go from there. So my picks are Look Back. It is an Amazon Prime film. It's basically an anime film. It's about these two young girls that become childhood friends because they both love manga and they both love drawing. So they create a manga together and they create a friendship out of that. Next one is Monkey Man. I think it was one of my
Yeah.
favorite action movies. Yeah, because Dev Patel stars and directs in it, and it's amazing. If you haven't seen Monkey Man, it's about an underground fighter in India who is seeking revenge against like the upper elites in society due to some rage from his childhood past. And honestly, it's a stellar film. I loved it so much. I went to see it in theaters 3 times, and I still love it. Next one is I Saw the TV Glow. It is an indie film that had a lot of discourse on Twitter and TikTok, and it's about these two young friends that bond over the show called The Pink Opaque. And after watching the show, they start to realize things about themselves that they didn't understand previously. And it's a very interesting coming of age story. And I really enjoyed it. It made me cry. And I love it so much. It's one of those movies where like I want to buy it on DVD. Like I want to have it for myself. And next one is Love Lies Bleeding. It is a film out of A24. Of course, I was going to watch it because Kristen Stewart is in it, and I love Kristen Stewart. It's a film about a gym owner who basically falls in love with a bodybuilder, and the gym owner's family drama kind of intertwines with their relationship, but it's really
Mhm.
good. Next one is Challengers, of course, the film that everyone's talking about, and I'm surprised it didn't get anything at the Oscars, but I think it's because it got released so early in the year that kind of like got forgotten about. But Challengers is a film about a young tennis player who is caught between the friendship of two other tennis players and how they're constantly vying for attention. And it's honestly one of the sexiest movies of this year, and I love this so much. Next one, The Six Triple Eight. Honestly, one of Tyler Perry's best movies, next to Diary of a Mad Black Woman. It is a biopic about the 6,888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, an all-black, all-female battalion in World War II. How they delivered postal mail to soldiers on the front line during World War II to help keep morale up. And then I have The Heretic, which is a horror film about two young Mormon missionaries who go visit an older gentleman who's crying about the Mormon faith, but it turns out he has questions about other things too, in regards to faith. And then The Fall Guy, the Ryan
Gosling.
Gosling. Oh gosh, I always
I
forget.
know there's so many Ryans.
Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt action movie is about a stunt guy who falls in love with a female director, and then the lead actor on her film goes missing, so he does everything he can to go find him because he's in love with her and he wants to prove himself to her. Next one is Conclave, a film about picking the next pope. That's literally all the film is about. It's about picking the next pope, but
Yeah.
it's so much more than that. And then the last one is We Live at Time, a non-linear romance film about a couple that details how they met and how they part. And it stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. And I went to go see that movie twice because it made me cry, so I had to go see it again. Yeah, and those are my picks for 2024. Yes.
I also loved Monkey Man. Like honestly, the
Yes.
second they said that was coming out, I was like locked in as a Dev Patel stan.
Yes.
I also really loved I Saw the TV Glow, and personally, that's one of the movies that I wish would have been more in an awards conversation to an
Yeah.
extent. I thought it was, I mean, obviously I could see why it's not, because it was like, sort of experimental. But I definitely think that if there was going to be a movie about transness at the Academy Awards, I wished it had been I Saw the TV Glow rather than Amelia Perez. However, Amelia Perez is the kind of movie about transness that the Academy would like. I also really loved Love Lies Bleeding. I really, really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was great. I have really become a Kristen Stewart fan, honestly. And I just really thought that movie was just like so fun and pulpy. And I do love a good crime movie. I will say though, personally, I was not very high on Challengers or the 688. Now, I do think the 688 is Tyler Perry's like best movie up there with, but I don't think that's saying a lot because the filmography in general is not that great. The 688 is so funny to me because like I feel like if we were going to have a conversation about propaganda in mainstream media this year, it should have been about that fucking movie. Because that was the propaganda.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I watched Challengers, but I was not as high on it as other people. I thought it was okay. I feel like that was a movie that in its advertising kind of made it look as if the Tashi Duncan character would be more important to the movie. And the movie was definitely more about art and like it was much more about their relationship, right? And I think that like that was interesting. I just felt like I wished it had been more about Tashi. And I think one of the other things that I really had wished is that, and this is the other thing too, I'm just not very high on Luca Guadagnino, but I do wish that this movie had been more sincere in some ways. In the sense that I think that Challengers had a lot of the elements to be a good melodrama, but it was not sincere enough to be good melodrama, in the sense that like it was, because like there were moments where like Tashi is saying stuff to whichever one was the redhead, her husband, and I was like, what if she had, instead of saying when he was like I love you and she says I know, what if she had instead, like, instead of shrugging and said, I know, what if she had like cupped his face and been more sincere and said, I know?
Mm.
Like, I don't know. Like, I just kept thinking about, like, what if this had just been a little bit more melodramatic? Like, it already is. Like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Let's just lean into that. And I feel like that's kind of how I feel about Luca Guadagnino's work in general, is that, like, his movie skirts the line of being melodrama,
Hmm.
but he won't let it be sincere enough.
Yeah.
He's a little too ironic, and it's like, let, let us in. uh,
Yeah. Tashi did feel a little bit like Han Solo, a little bit where like the love is there, but it's not really like expressed openly.
yeah, and I just kept thinking, like, what if this character wasn't so ironic all the time? Like, was it?
Yeah.
What if she wasn't so smirky all the fucking time?
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't feel like that's a knock on Zendaya, because at the end of
Mm.
the day, had like line delivery and stuff like that. Yeah, that's on an actor, but at the same time, the director is going to tell you how they want it to be done. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, he he could, like, if he had want her to be more sincere, she could have played it more sincere if that's what he had wanted. And there's possible that there's like takes of it out there on the cutting room floor where she
Hmm.
is more sincere in the movie. But I don't know. That's the thing that I just kept thinking about. Uh, I haven't seen Heretic, and I am watching The Fall Guy. Like, clear, I'm gonna finish it after we get off this call.
Hmm.
But I do like The Fall Guy so far. I do want to watch Heretic.
Hmm.
You know that I loved We Live in Time. I also cried when we watched it. I was very emotional.
Yeah.
I thought Andrew Garfield was great as a nerdy little husband.
Hmm.
Florence Pugh is also really good in it, but I did think it was interesting that people were pointing out about how, like, she is in her early 30s and he's in his early 40s, but they were both supposed to be playing people who are like 33, 34, 35.
Hmm.
I do think that is like an interesting conversation, because definitely men get a longer chance to play in their mid 30s than women
Women
do.
do. Yeah.
And I also saw Conclave, one of the movies that I was like so excited for this year. Loved it. One of my favorite movies of the year. I'm pulling for Conclave to win Best Picture, to stop Emilia Perez from winning. Like I said, I loved Conclave. I really, really do also wish uh, that this could be Ray Fiennes this year to win
Oh
Best
my
Actor.
gosh. Oh wow. You know what? You're so right because I actually like I have to remind myself to like be patient when I'm watching movies because like sometimes when a movie's taking a long time to like build, it's like it's building, it's world building, it's background, and then once it gets into like the drama in Conclave, I'm like, oh girl, we're moving way too fast. Like so much is happening all at once. And Ray Fiennes, he does such a good job of like keeping the tempo. He does a good job of like, you know
Hmm.
what? Let's just keep everything mild. Let's keep it balanced. Everyone else around me is kind of wilding a little bit, so I need to be calm. I need to keep my demeanor. I need to be sure that I'm level-headed because everyone else wants to do their own little thing and they're all coming at me and I cannot get out of pocket right now. Like I have to be like calm. And everything going on in the scenes, like secrecy, political maneuvering. Honestly, if it was me, I would get so annoyed. Like after day three, I'd be like, you know what? I'm leaving. At this point, like, just pick the pup and go. I want to go home. Like, I can't be around y'all anymore.
That's
But
so real.
he does
I
such.
I loved Conclave so
Yes.
bad. Like, I just loved it. And I was like, honestly, I knew I was gonna love it because I love movies in general where it's just dudes in rooms talking. And that's all Conclave is. It's dudes in rooms talking.
Yes.
Uh, but I loved everything about it so much. I loved it as a movie about ambition, but also it's
Hmm.
about God. I loved the final reveal at
Oh
the
my
end.
gosh.
I loved it was also just so dramatic and
Hmm.
catty. There's the scene where Ray finds his character, Cardinal Lawrence, is trying to make copies, and then Isabella Rossellini's character comes in, and she's like, "Oh, Father, let me help you. Let me do this
Yeah.
for you." And I was like, as I was watching it, I was like, "This scene makes me think of the Burn Book scene in Mean Girls." I was
Hmm.
like, Conclave and Mean Girls would make such an excellent double feature together.
Right. That's true because, like, she is supposed to be helping him because the women are meant to do all the work. And he's trying to copy something that's like, I can't let anybody else see this.
But
Like,
he
I
see
have to do
this.
it. Yes. Yes. And now she's seen it too. And it's like, well, I guess this is where we are right now.
but also it's like she's like, oh, I've been waiting years to do this. That's what I love about it, is that like you can tell, especially by later events, is that she was waiting for a moment
Yes.
like this.
Yes. She was waiting and she was ready because every time they do this, she's just like in the background, just watching, just peeping everything. But she had her moment.
Exactly.
Yes. I feel like for 2024, I'm actually surprised that I put two action movies because usually with action movies, I kind of watch them to turn my brain off. But
Mm,
with Monkey Man, I think I got a little annoyed when people kept calling it like the Indian John Wick
yeah,
because
same.
I know that like the action feels very similar to like John Wick and the movements and everything, but it's not exactly the same because like John Wick in the revenge story is like a belated revenge story on his wife's passing, after he loses his dog, which is the last connection he has to his wife. And with Monkey Man, it's something even deeper than that because it's about a man who lost his childhood home because there was, this man in upper echelons of society that wanted to burn down these people's home just because they wanted the space. They just wanted the
Exactly.
land and they drove them all out. And then he sees this man working together with this religious leader who is in tandem with these like political leaders. And all these people together are all in their little crew and their oligarchy. And they're basically screwing over like the poor people in India. And of course, he is trying to get revenge and fight back because you destroyed like the place where I lived, the place I called home, and you're continuing to do it to other people, and no one else is stopping you. So I'm going to be the one to take you out. And I also love the fact that he used like I forget the name of the warriors, but it was the trans warriors that he was staying with that were kind of like regulated to their temple because they were like
Hmm.
pushed out of even the slums because they couldn't even live there, and to like bring them into the action. I was like, see, this is the kind of I sign up for because that was everything. That was epic. And Dev Patel, this is another thing, like having creatives of color telling the stories they want to make in the way that they want to tell it without any kind of interference and then bringing it to like the cinema, that is what I love. And I'm glad that he didn't back down when Netflix was like, oh, you have to cut this stuff out because like this isn't going to work with our Indian audience. He was like, okay, and what, girl? I'm just going to go somewhere else. And then they made the film, it made money, it did well, and we got to see it in theaters, not at home on our couch, like in theaters, which I adored. Yeah. I love Monkey Man. Now that I'm talking about it, I have to go watch it again. I have to go see it again. Oh my gosh. Yes. But I think I also agree with you about the 6888 because I watched it with my family. Because it feels like it's a family movie. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly. No, same. I watched it with my mom.
yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, like it did get me like emotionally. I feel like the beginning was a little bit long when they were like, kind
Yeah,
of like setting up the story and
her
everything.
backstory and all that.
Yeah. I did like the backstory. I thought it was very cute. For a minute I was like, this feels like a completely different movie that we're in. But like once it kind of got into the army and everything, I was like, okay, this makes more sense. But I feel like the 6888 falls into like the same caveats that happen with films like this where like there is, the white people, they're like angry and racist, but it's cartoonishly evil to the
Yeah,
point where it's like we're doing a little too much. Let's back up, let's chill. And like I'm not saying like they didn't face that kind of discrimination, but like they always kind of play it up in the movies when that happens. And then of course like there is Kerry Washington's character who was reminding the women to like, sit up straight, stand up tall, wear your hair a certain way. But I think there's a line where she says like, I won't tolerate any kind of black foolishness. And it's like, okay. It's like, I mean, I get it. We're in the army. Like, you can't, everything needs to be in line. But that line felt like a little out
what do
of
you
left
mean by
field.
that?
Like, that's a little harsh. But I get it. Like, the army is very strict, it's very restrictive. Yes. But I think I really enjoyed the movie just because of like the story. Because obviously, like I didn't know the story, I had never heard it before. So like this being put into a movie is great. Obviously not everything that has to do with the 6888 was in the film. So like there's more research to be done so people can understand it. But I think that you are right in saying like me saying this is Tyler Perry's best film is not high praise because we've seen his other movies. And I think for me, as like a moviegoer, it makes me understand that like if we can deliver at least better quality than he has delivered previously in his films, like what was that movie? Fall from Grace, and then Mia
Oh yeah.
Culpa. Like, if we can deliver better quality films, if that is possible at Tyler Perry Studios, then that is what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Because like the fact that he had Kerry Washington in a film and it was absolutely unwatchable, like, not Kerry Washington, Kelly Rowland. Like, you have Kelly Rowland starring one of your films with Trevante Rhodes, and yet you serve me slop. But I'm watching this and it's like, this is actually not that bad. So, what's going on, Tyler? Because it feels like you're just doing it when you want to. You know? Like, we can set a higher standard for ourselves. If you're going to do all the writing, all the directing, all the producing, then let's just do it all well. You know? It's the very least you could do. I did want to get your opinion on Love Lies Bleeding as well, because I think I watched that earlier in the year, so I did forget, but I had to kind of like review my like movie list that I kind of keep with the movies I watched. I was like, oh, Love Lies Bleeding, I remember that movie, because I am a really big Kristen Stewart fan, so I'm curious to see like what about the movie kind of turned you around on Kristen Stewart.
Well, I've been kind of coming around on Kristen Stewart for the last few years, but I did really enjoy the movie. It was just like, I love a good crime romance movie in general. And I think the movie was, oh, excuse me.
You're good.
Oh my gosh, very pulpy and funny. I like the way it came together too. It had some really interesting like sci-fi elements, I guess you could kind of say. It got very Cronenberg-esque. It was just so fun. It was I guess like similarly with The Substance is that it just went there.
Yeah.
It was willing to take a really big swing and make something really weird and interesting, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking about putting Kinds of Kindness on my list because I am a huge Yorgos Lanthimos fan, but I don't think that Kinds of Kindness was really like my favorite from him because it kind of felt a little long. It's like three movies in one, you know?
Yeah.
And as much as I love Yorgos Lanthimos kind of like pushing the envelope and like, you know, just going there, this movie, it felt, because it was so long, the story kind of got lost. And it was just one of those movies where I was like, I need to break this down to like a molecular level to like really get it. But then as I was like kind of like reading up on it and like watching interviews, at some point I was just like, I don't know if I enjoyed this movie as much as I wanted to, you know? And I remember just watching Love Lies Bleeding after I'd seen that. And I was like, this is so interesting because it goes there. And like, for me, I felt like the story was like maybe a little bit basic, but I think that with Katie O'Brien and like Kristen Stewart together, they really do like bring something out in the story that made me a lot more interested. It's not just because they're both hot. It's not that. But they're really good actors too. And I really did enjoy it. And I agree with you. There was like a Cronenberg-esque element, especially with like Katie taking the
Steroids.
the steroids, yeah. And her getting like really buff out of nowhere. It's like, oh. I remember watching it and I was like, this seems unrealistic. But I was like, this is A24. We have to like suspend our disbelief for a second. This is a movie, you know. We're watching, you know, we're here to have fun. But yeah, you're right. It did feel very pulpy and very fun. And I am excited to see like what else Kristen Stewart comes out with because I did love Lies Bleeding. I thought it was really great. Okay. Oh, also I saw the TV Glow. I'm curious to kind of get your first reactions to the movie because I think a lot of people online, people kept saying that they didn't understand it, but I feel like when I was watching the movie, well, first of all, for those who haven't seen I Saw the TV Glow, it's a film about two best friends, like I said before, that kind of bond over this old show called The Pink Opaque. In the first 10 minutes, the character Owen is in the gym, right? And they're doing the thing with the parachute where they like lift it up and bring it down. And when he goes under the parachute, it's literally white, blue, and pink. And I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. Because symbolism. We all know what symbolism is. But I remember seeing like critiques online and people saying like they didn't get it or like it wasn't trans enough for them or like they didn't see like what other people were seeing. And I was just kind of like, I guess I was confused as to how people didn't see that. So I'm curious to see like what were your initial reactions to seeing the movie? Like what were your thoughts?
I liked the movie. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. It's sort of, I guess, like Lynchian in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I think I could see why like people were a little confused because it is like it is working a lot in like allegory and
Mm-hmm.
like that symbolism. It's not explicit, and then it is also it's like about a trans person but who never transitions. So
Yeah, that's true. I I did notice that, and I feel like I enjoyed the subtlety in the film because a lot of times when people have like a lot of stories that are centered around like LGBTQ characters, coming out is like the pivotal point in their life, or they're already out and proud. So having a film about someone who never really like comes out or never really like kind of embraces who they are is definitely different because people don't really get it because it's like why would you make a movie about this? It feels like they're not really like living their life. But I think it's interesting because of course there is the final shot that says there's still time, and I remember the scene when he's at the birthday party and he just starts screaming, and everyone's just kind of like still and like no one's paying attention, but he's like screaming and he's losing his head, and he goes into the bathroom and he like kind of calms down, and I know something else happens, but I don't remember the movie exactly because it's been a while since I've watched it. And but when he comes out of the bathroom, he just kind of like is apologizing to everybody, and no one really like is paying attention to what he's saying. Like no one really regards the fact that he's apologizing. And it wasn't until I left the film where I realized like he because he's lived this life of normalcy and he's living this life that he feels like he has to live. He is like inside of himself, like screaming out because he's like, this is not who I am. This is not who I'm meant to be. Like, I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel happy. And it's like his skin is like, he wants to rip himself out of his skin. And like, he's screaming on top of his lungs, but no one can see because like, you just seem fine. And I feel like,
exactly, yeah.
yeah. And also, he was like aging like crazy. And I feel like it wasn't like a literal aging, but it's like almost like, it's a metaphor. Like he feels like he's kind of dying on the inside because he
Hmm.
never really came out and lived the life that he wanted to live. Because having to like, because of the life he's lived with his dad and his dad being someone who's not really like open and accepting, if he comes out as like a trans woman, obviously his dad would not accept him. He would be like shunned. He would be kicked out. It would be difficult for him to like kind of live that life. And it's a difficult life to like it's a difficult road to walk essentially. So he decides that it's just safer for me to be in the closet. But because he's chosen the safer option, he's just not happier in that way. I think that's really what I got from the film, and I kind of wish that like there were not that I wish there were more films like that, but I think that having a film with an LGBT character in a story like that isn't centered around coming out is good because now people can see like different perspectives of that walk, because every person who's come out has had to stay in the closet in some way or had to like hide some part of themselves for safety or for any reason in regards to that. And then I haven't seen Emilia Perez. I've just seen like the clips of it online, and I really don't plan on watching it because I didn't think that people were actually going to watch that movie. But it does feel disappointing to see like a movie that doesn't seem like it was well made versus a film that has very thoughtful message behind it get forgotten, and then one film get like 10 Oscar nominations.
13.
13. Never mind. 13. That's great. Good for them. I'm so happy. But yeah. Yes. Do you have any final thoughts? Do you feel like on like films of 2024?
No.
Same, same. I think it was a really strong year. Excuse me. I know what that was. It was a fairly strong year for films, and I am excited for the Oscars and of course like any other award shows coming out, and I will be excited to start binge watching all the movies that have been nominated to kind of give my own take, even though, I'm not an Oscar voter, but hey, I want to see if I have different opinions. But that was best movies of 2024, our picks. If you guys agree or disagree, feel free to let us know. We're going to go into the last section of the podcast, which is Watch List, where we talk about movies and TV shows that we're excited to watch in the upcoming weeks. And honestly, the only thing I'm really looking forward to watching is Sonic 3 and also One of Them Days, because I have been, I've just been in the mood for something fun. You know, I want to go to the
It's real.
theater, turn my brain off, have a good time. And actually, I forgot to say this. I'm surprised you put Trap on your list because I think I like a few M. Night Shyamalan movies, but like not all of them are my favorite. But I remember watching Trap and just being like, this is the most head scratching movie I've ever seen, and it's very confusing. But you know what? I feel like it's one of his better movies. So I think I'm going to put that on my watch list as well to rewatch Trap.
I just had so much fun watching it. Like I said, I went to go see it in the theater with a friend, and it was just like, okay, yeah, let's just do it. Yeah, he's throwing oil on people. Like I'm sorry, it was so funny to me, and I think
Hmm.
that's the other thing too. It's that like this movie is funny.
Yeah.
The things you are laughing at are meant to be laughed at. Like
Yes.
it is ridiculous that he's like, let's go underneath the stage. Like
Hmm.
it is a ridiculous movie, and I love that for it. The only thing that I'm like really looking forward to is that this Friday Companion comes out,
Hmm.
which is like a new thriller sci-fi movie, which I think will be entered into the Good for Her canon. I have an entire
Yeah.
Good for Her list on Letterbox of movies that I think are, you'll say good for her when you
Yeah.
watch it. It stars like Jack Quaid, and basically from the trailers I can tell us that he's a dude who buys a sex robot and then
Hmm.
jailbreaks said sex robot,
Hmm.
uh, and it backfires on him, so
I don't know if he buys it. I thought he made it.
or made it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think a lot of actors in the movie are like newer, fresh face actors. So that's
Mhm.
also a movie that I have to find on my watch list because I am excited
Yeah,
to see that
it's
as well.
Jack Quaid. I'm not really familiar with the actress Sophie Thatcher who plays the doll. She was in Heretic though.
Yeah. She's also in Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, she is.
Yes. And a couple other, I think Harvey Gillian is in it and he's in
Yeah, he
What We Do in the
is.
Shadows.
Oh yeah, he is.
Mm. Yes. Awesome. I had to put that on my watch list as well, Companion. Because that does sound like a fun time.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, Alexa, where can people find you on the internet?
You can follow me at Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at Alexa Recommends. Please subscribe to my YouTube. I already post on YouTube Shorts on there, and I'm working on a long form review show called Alexa Recommends, where I will review new movies and recommend you some old ones based on that.
Awesome. Well, guys, don't forget to check in the description for Alexa's YouTube channel. All her socials will be linked down below. Don't forget to follow us on all our socials as well. Subscribe to the Patreon, subscribe to YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky as well. And don't forget to tell your friends and family about your new favorite podcast. I've been meaning to watch that. My name is Monica, and I'll see you guys next week with a new topic and a new guest like we do every single week. Bye.